The caveat is that they're all connected. So shadows kind
Yeah.
of feed from one another in the end, and the gifts feed from one another. It's almost like you tap into the shadow, you turn them all on across the board, and it
Yeah.
depends. No matter what key you have your shadow in.
People like you that are enabling great change for others and just your presence and just your being. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a celebrity to do it either. You could just be walking down the street or sitting in a room.
Yeah, and you're making the difference.
How can I contribute something? And that's a big fear too. It's like, oh, I'm going to change my city or my town or my country. Like, yeah, it's possible. It starts with one person. The 10th gene key, self-obsession, naturalness, being. The more spiritual we become, the more achingly serious we become, and the more we think we know. We have to admit at a certain point, however, that we know nothing. Absolutely nothing.
I often wonder, why don't we remember everything that we say?
Ooh, that's an interesting place to start. Oh, we would just be like computers.
Or our brains are just going to evolve to a massive, much, much larger brains.
Yeah, I wonder if it's mathematical, like we don't have enough space, like the like all the dips and rivets in our brain tissue that we don't have enough space for it. But as has been studied, like memory isn't in the brain. It's in the tissues. It's in water.
So it's in the
Maybe,
body.
yeah, maybe because the nature of memory is based in water, which is fluid and changing. That's why we don't have like, call it like a computer like brain. But then some people are like photographic memory. So that'd be curious to study that.
Hmm. Did I tell you a story about Daisy?
Tell me.
All right, quick sidetrack. Daisy is a homeless woman in Venice
Okay.
that I ran into accidentally because she ended up on Fox News in LA.
Uh,
And her handmaid's tiny home on a boardwalk in Venice was ended up being dismantled by cops. Daisy is young, has three children that are in random foster homes here in LA. But the reason why she caught my attention immediately, I don't watch the news. It's literally one of those ads that pass through whatever,
mhm.
IG or YouTube. And I was just like, what? You know, how sometimes you just get like a little instant info and then it spreads from there.
Uh-huh.
So, but the reason why she caught my attention was because she called a woman cop a goddess and she rejected to call her anyhow else. No official, no ma'am, no nothing. Officer, the goddess, the goddess, the goddess, the goddess. And she kept this really high energy where she kept saying, but the goddess, I really want us to collaborate and collaborate and collaborate. I know the laws, I know the city codes, I know that I'm not supposed to do this. This is why I put the wheels under it. And it's simple, structured, tiny little one that she can push with her body that she wanted to build for herself and other homeless people. Everything that I'm learning lately through the schooling, all these years, through all these books, it's already in her mind. When you listen to Daisy from Venice, you will hear the downloads from the future that come into her body. And I bet she's not spending hours reading. She's
Yeah.
homeless,
Yeah.
but she has this knowledge that I'm taking so much effort just to understand and comprehend. So her brain capacity, and she looks normal. I think she's even younger than me, like really young in her age. And all she cares is just to go and see her children, to do her duties, the jail duties, and everything that she has to do. And it's very real and about the reality of her life and where is she. But at the same time, she embodies the paradox of having everything and having nothing as one and the same thing.
Mm.
And I'm like, many of us, not to say majority of people, are yet to discover this knowledge that it just is within her. And I'm just blown away. And for weeks after that, I tried to write a story about Daisy, and no language will cover it.
Yeah.
Everything. And I wrote and rewrote and wrote. And I was like, it doesn't justify. It doesn't justify. I cannot explain it. And I can just live it and feel it and uh, really just respect it and being in awe of it. And it's beautiful. So I just wanted to tell you that. So the
Yeah.
brain only can hold certain capacity to it, but also we do already have so much capacity that it's unused that can
Right.
be used.
When you're reading the 10th, at least when you're telling me the story of Daisy, her name's Daisy,
Daisy.
naturalness and being, it sounds like on some level she's embodied that.
But how? How? Is she born with CD already without the shadow? Let's go.
Well, curious to know more about her life story, but you said she's like homeless and she was in trouble with the police over something.
Went to jail, was aggressive, is
Yeah.
ridiculed online, has a knowledge of her mental disabilities,
Oh,
but also abilities,
yeah.
functional body, but yet a future state of mind that is just stuck in the present, that it's not ready for it.
Ah, because as Richard talks about the shadow of self-obsession, he states it takes going through the entire maze of the
Labyrinth.
mind to finally release and then become like natural. But if she has kind of, if she incarnated with something kind of missing or like an activation, like you said, where she can't, she's not really planning, she's not really thinking past her future, just present. That enables just the state of being to be embodied within her at all times,
Yeah. And
which
you
is
can
cool.
feel the energy.
Yeah.
You need to YouTube her. She
Yeah, I
calls
will.
the I'll send you some videos just to see it. It's like just I'm like, what? And then I'm reading the comments of cancel culture. It's like people are so not
Yeah.
ready to even
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
understand this.
Yeah. Um, it makes me think of
Oh,
someone else, Frank Yang. He I found him about 12 years ago and he was just doing like crazy stunts. He was from Taiwan. Crazy stunts like walking naked in the street, going to the gym and he would like drink alcohol while he's lifting. He just would do anything. And it was kind of like attention seeking. And now he's a non-dual kind of like an awakening teacher, in a way. And he spends like he makes creative videos. That's his creative outlet. And when I was reading this, I was thinking about him because he fully went into this self-obsession, like making his body into the perfect thing, and then he does everything to the extreme, really goes into it. And now when you hear him speak and you see his videos, he's so focused on not the individual anymore. And he uses a 360-degree camera
mm,
to film and he'll move it around like as he's like walking through city streets. He spends a lot of time getting portraits of strangers, homeless people on the street, whoever. And his focus is on, he's like, look at this form, look at this form, look at this form. And he's talking about a lot of Buddhist meditation and other things. Um, and by the end of it, with the images along with his teaching, you get the sense of, oh, right, we're all just kind of the same thing in essence. And he's not shy at all. Like he goes up to a stranger and he's like, and people will go, well, that's really close. And he just carries on. He's like, there's no, like, you can't hurt me. I can't be offended. Like, in a way, he's kind of gone deep in his shadows enough times where he's at this place of like his natural emanation of
Hmm.
ease.
Wow. So living in the shadow, darkest corners of it for as long as it has to happen
Yeah.
will eventually make light of it.
Yeah. And doing it
It's
many
so cool.
times. And in rereading the first Gene Key, I was reminded that the shadow in the city, like it seems like a linear thing, like, okay, I'm in my shadow, I'm gonna go to my gift, and then I'm gonna go to my city and I'll never come back down here. But he says often the city will fold back into the shadow and the shadow can fold into the city. And this is one where it's like very clear. Self-obsession and being, and one aspect of being looks like doing nothing. And from the outside looking at someone that's doing nothing, like really, you're so self-obsessed. Don't you see that the world is hurting? Don't you see all these people need your gifts, need your
Yeah.
abilities? And they're just like, what do you mean? Everything's perfect.
Yeah. I had recently, actually, a couple of weeks ago, I had the event or situation. We were sitting at the table and we were eating dinner, and I was trying to philo- like run my mind philosophically and think outside the box. And I kept hitting the walls with the woman that I sat at the table, and they're like, "But we're already lucky. We're lucky to be here. Do you know the world is in a war? There's a lot of people that don't have food to eat on the table. You are already lucky." And it's when you have such a closed way of looking at it and doing a tunnel vision onto something so targeted, or you're not really seeing anything on peripheral, right? So you don't see what you don't see, yet you
Mm,
only see what you focus on,
mm.
which is the paradox of it too. It's like, you're right. We keep running into the paradoxes. As I watch all the videos that we did in the already, it's like we always come back to the same. It's like, but
Yeah,
it's this and this.
yeah,
It's like one cannot exist without the other.
yeah, yeah. And in a layered way, I was thinking about our journey with doing this podcast
Mm.
and how it's like, well, it is a bit self-obsessed to like put ourselves out there for an hour and a half for every gene key, like 100 hours to go through this and really kind of selfishly trying to stir up conversation, look at our shadows, get different perspectives. Um, in a way, we're going through the maze with each other.
Mm.
And I think I've been able to go into my shadows deeper just from these conversations. And I'm not claiming that I figured it out already, but I'm just grateful for the experience of it. And that's ultimately for anyone out there that kind of listens to this stuff and has the temptation of pressure over top of them. And usually that's programmed in through religion. The pressure to like figure it out, Johnny. Like it's not that hard. You just need to be good. Stop sinning.
Mm.
Do your prayer, do your mantra. Um, it's like ultimately this life has components of a journey, of a adventure. And we're meant to find out like where are the sharp corners and then where is the light and the beauty and the love. Um, and we need both to see it. That's kind of I'm rabbit trailing, so maybe we can dive into something on the
Okay,
shadow.
but I do need to add something on what you just
Yes,
said.
please.
We're at the Jinky 10
Mhm.
out of 64. And technically we only did what, 20 hours in total of this, if not even less. And you're absolutely right. As what it came out, let me just, because I just felt it in my body. I have to express it in a way
Yeah.
that it's coming. It's like what it came out as a meteorite. Like it was just literally bam into our heads out of blue. We really never knew where is this going. We went with the flow because the space that we would enter felt organic and creative on its own. There was never a target at all. There was never an ending goal, but it was a journey. And it was almost like a calling or the nudge to enter something so that we can both heal. I see it as our own way of finding whatever they were looking to find, even
Yeah.
though we don't know what that is. And as we dive deeper into it, so it becomes a ritual space where we get to learn from one another because we are now mirror. We're looking into each other's vulnerabilities, shadows, gifts, and potential cities. And we're able to learn how to respect the other on another level that we can't if we were just to do this work on our own. So I've been reading this on and off for years, and I never had such a depth of understanding through thinking it out loud with you. And we touched base on the same exact thing on the number 4. So I would listen to our video of the 4, and in 4, I'm trying to explain the exact same thing. And we're like, how can I learn unless I have another in front of me?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that learning comes with just being able to reflect. We never once said that one is wrong, never once said that one is right.
Yeah.
We're both and wrong and right in our own ways for ourselves. And we
Yeah.
just get to experience this rebirth or whatever that it is. I think this is so profoundly healing for me. And we have like, just for a visual, we
It's
have this
thick.
much to go.
We've
Ah,
yeah, in reading the first few, like they're deep. There's a lot of depth, but they're not broad. And then in some when we get into the doubles, 11, 22, 33, 44, 55, it gets really broad. And it's like
yeah.
some of those podcasts I think we might have to devote some additional time for.
Oh, yeah. 22 and 55, especially. It's
Yeah.
huge.
Hmm.
Yeah, a couple episodes maybe. We'll see,
Yeah.
I guess. There's
Do
no
you,
end to any of this.
yeah, I'm curious, and you're feeling that this has been really healing for you. How much in your profile do you have the two line? The two line is often associated with relationship, marriage, meaning like you and another or you and a reflection.
Well, I just read my two line. My two line is in evolution. Two. Then I have
Oh,
my pearl is in two. My life work is in two. My
yeah.
vocation is in two.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The hell? I never even saw this.
Yeah.
Why?
That makes sense.
What makes sense? Oh, for the relationships?
I yeah. This is like
Damn it.
this is like your way of processing, relating, generating ideas, and evolving. Like it's your yeah.
Whoa,
I don't
what
have
about
any two
you?
in my profile, not a single one.
Yeah, I'm looking. You have sixes. 666 555.
Three, two, and then one, couple
Yeah.
ones.
Oh, so you saying you're running your own show?
I'm running the show, and you're just here as a guest. No, I'm not. That's not how it's.
Possibly. Okay, so if my way of understanding this is from the connection, relationships, or partnership or
Mhm,
community way, where
mhm.
two and duality is necessary for me to reflect it back. What is your way?
Um, my way of
Going through
going
this
through it.
journey.
Cool. Well, it's interesting with a lot of sixes. Sixes tend to use every method. So I definitely feel that like there's introspection. I like relating with another. Um, the 3 and 4 can be like smaller and larger groups. The 5 is like broadcasting to the world, like everyone listen. And then that 6 is just like I've done it all, so here it is. Um, and in my history, I've fell into the one, just like internalizing and introspection. But I think that's more a product of circumstance around childhood and not so much the emanation of my being of who I am.
Hmm. So you're all over, which is kind of good. The six
Yeah,
is combination. It's the
55.
totality of it. Just you have 6 and 55.
Well, it's interesting. No, 55 and 3. It's interesting that I have 55 as my life's work, and I have predominantly like all over the map. 6 is a lot of it. It's like reflecting
Mm.
back. It's like you're not going to take one route. Yeah.
Or closing the cycle, or literally being a cherry on the top, Eric.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Damn, power. Whew. Okay, shall we start 20
Yeah.
minutes later? Okay. So shadow is self-obsession of the 10th GP, and the stage is yours. Let's see what you got.
So he uses the question, or he points to the question. I think I don't see it here, but who am I? Is that in this
Mm,
one? Yeah.
that's in gift.
That's in gift. Okay. But in the shadow, it is know thyself. The self-obsession of the 10th shadow is driven by fear, and it is a very specific unconscious fear. It is the fear of losing your identity. Um,
Mm.
and this is like probably one of the deepest fears for all of humanity. And I think of Daisy as being someone that's like, what identity? Just or even with Frank, like he has a memory, he has a record of his past, and he knows what's out there. But um, I often think of his story, and he's been like arrested a few times and gone off the rails, and he's got some very vulnerable things out in the world that everyone can see. How hard would it be to show up as like an ascended master, um, knowing that stuff is out there because you're identifying with like our his story or his story, the story that's been told about us. So that's something that comes up a lot for me in reading The Shadow is the history of what I've done and where I've been, and using that as my tool of identification of who I am, instead of allowing the free flowing just journey, just going through it.
Does that mean taking chances?
Of course.
Does that mean saying yes to things that come your way?
Mhm.
There's a huge difference. There is a difference between when it's given to you like this with no effort and when it's forced upon you.
Yeah.
So does that mean taking chances that life gives you to exit this shadow
Mm-hmm.
and become organic, natural essence of your smell, your sound,
Mm-hmm.
your voice, your statements, your truth.
Yeah, and that shadow is like it's tempting to turn to it in times of like essentially being given an opportunity that comes in, it's easy and it's flowing. I think people are given those opportunities all the time. So why do they turn them down?
Why?
It seems to me like you turn it down because it would disidentify you with who you think you are, what you think you know about yourself. To to step out into that that path where I can project out, like if I'm working at a bank, I can project out the next 30 years and feel very secure. But if someone comes along and is like, hey, do you want to go sailing across the world? Uh, no, that doesn't sound very fun at all. I don't know what's going to happen a day from now. Plus, I don't know how to sail. It's just like the feeling of exposure, right? The feeling of exposure. What do you think about that?
It all comes down to that fear
Yeah.
that it's like in our it's like imprinted in our existence. A fear of maybe not belonging or maybe not being part of something. I highlighted here, um, I highlighted here with a note on the side. Had to write a note. Thus, in the world today, we can see two main types of these type of people: those who follow the crowd and
Mm.
those who try to escape the crowd at all costs. The 10th shadow does not and cannot consider anyone outside self. My note and question was: have you ever met someone who only and only talks about themselves?
Yeah.
How many?
How many people? Oh, maybe a couple handfuls over the course of my life. I would assume that I didn't hold a strong memory of those people though. I don't think I would have, you know, spent that much time with them.
Okay, so I remember one, and to this day, I remember him. And though and when you're in a shadow of self obsession,
Hmm.
they genuinely, okay, not genuinely, but they cannot understand anyone else other than themselves. When you live under the shadow, you literally project everybody else through your subjective way of thinking.
Hmm.
I. And I met a man years ago here, actually, in the United States, in Vegas, and he would only talk about, oh, but I feel like this. Oh, and you would try to engage in dialogue, but yet it's a solo monologue
Yeah.
that he's leading because he was so you can't even participate. No matter how you try, there's no connection with it. You cannot even enter into the space that he's in because he's so self-absorbed.
Hmm.
And it is so deep. The walls are thick. The doors never open. Nobody gets in. Nobody gets out. And everything that he, from himself or herself, actually expresses is through, like, it's almost like they feel the real center of the universe. Everything else evolves around them, and
Hmm.
everything else is the subjective way. It is happening for them. It is for him. It has his own way of projecting everything. It's like all of it is them, and it's so tiring.
Hmm.
And what I realized it literally sucks your energy out. It's like,
Yes.
and it drinks all your blood in your body within seconds. And I'll never forget him because it's such a good example that we do have people that are living
Yeah.
that are really self-obsessed like this.
Yeah. And that's an extreme example, but I also think of um up until I used plant medicine, I would say that's how the world felt to me. It felt like it was me at the center, and everything else was an attempt to, be accepted or be invited or whatever, but it was always back to me. And once I took the journey of plant medicine, I remember that the next day using psilocybin, the next day I went to work and I worked at a bank and people would come in and I'm like, "Hi." And all my interactions were just like magnificent. I went home that day and I'm like, I could work at the bank forever. This is an amazing job. People are awesome. And I've never like just never that's not me. That's not who I was or who I identified with before. And so it just cracked me open. It gave me that ego death and a chance to look at the world as through the eyes of another, like truly, instead of just talking about it or theorizing.
And how long did it last?
Hard to say. I would say the initial high I got from it was like 2 or 3 days, but I was still able to access, like I could almost access it. Like there was a new pathway where if I wanted
Huh.
to, I could remember, okay, I can go into that and access it. And once that pathway is open, I couldn't go back fully, which going back fully would it feels like being lost again. It was like I'm not lost anymore. I'm now co-located in unity in a glimpse. It's like like a crack in the door where the light comes in. Like I've now glimpsed that light, so I can't go back into the room and pretend there's no light coming in. It's just impossible.
Hmm. And out of curiosity, what shadow do you think you cracked open for gift then?
Yeah, it feels like 10, but I said unity and I'm trying to remember. That's three, I think. No,
11.
two. Dislocation. Oh, that's interesting that I used co-locate. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So it's 3.
Number two, dislocation,
Oh,
orientation, and unity. Like I felt oriented in the universe. I was like, oh, okay.
wow. Yeah, we will touch base on this. I think it's a good leeway to 11th gift of that
Mhm.
cracking open,
Mhm.
and that left and right brain when you shut one and open the other one
Mm.
to
Yeah.
explore,
Mm.
which is a good example. But to go back to the self-obsession and identity is like in the center of the universe. I think we it's hard because it's hard to not live this in the young age, especially in adolescence or
Mm.
teenage years. And I recall living like this because I didn't know in my young age. I just compared myself to other people a lot, and I thought what they're doing, I need to do. But who cares about them? Like the world is me. Everybody's looking at me. I walk down the aisle. I mean, I walk down the in the cafeteria or like shop or a grocery store, and I think all eyes are on me. I'm the most important
Yeah.
person. I was so obsessed with being perfect that but almost everybody is passing through it. My nephew is now going through that stage and he thinks he's the smartest, undoubtedly the smartest guy in the planet, not
Mhm.
only a country, not only a family or a country. You're talking planet and universe and cosmos. It's like,
Yeah.
come on. But the shadow is like, we have to, it's almost like we all are going through it one or the other way as we mature, as we learn about our emotional states and what they are, and as we start building our structured life one or the other way. It's interesting.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
yeah. Do you want to add anything on it?
It'll be interesting to see as Richard talks about 2027 being a key age of evolution for the new children that come into the world, that they might be able to bypass some of that. I think there's still an element of working through shadows, but
Mm.
I imagine, and I think it's culminating with technology and the access to information. I think they're just going to be like, why would I think I'm the only person? Yeah.
Yeah. And I also wrote a post about this, which was interesting because I had to like sometimes the information just wants to get out of my mind because it's stuck there and it needs a form of expression. So,
Mhm.
I write the stories, and when I write them, they just are nonsense, but yet they make so much sense and just put them on there. The story was when I about the young people and young adults that I'm working right now with currently at my job. They don't they're built differently already. Like you're talking, those are early 20s, 21, fresh out of college kids, and they're like not so far away from me, but yet, yeah, pretty much they don't they don't really function the same way like we used to.
Mm.
And like you're talking 15 to 20 years of difference between us, and yet they don't like your heart is broken. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Like totally cannot even understand. maybe the verbiage that I'm using, it's like totally, no, I don't know what that means. Like I cannot even connect to what you're trying to explain to me. So it almost like Richard touches based on the 2012 per whatever the shape of the planet and alignment with all the cosmic like planets out there, and how that huge leap of consciousness and collective consciousness cracked the door open for a lot of different souls to come in and
Mm-hmm.
to embody different levels of gifts and bring completely new shadows that will slowly phase out the old shadows. So I can see it already, especially when I'm like, the other day somebody was saying, it's like, you always talk deep. Like, you're again in a deep conversation. I was like, of course. What do you mean? She's like, keep it simple.
Keep it
Great feedback.
superficial is what they wanted.
Maybe we'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe I am complicating it.
Oh,
I'm open. I'm open to
right.
change, you know, to understand me that way.
What was your response when they said that?
No response.
Oh, you just
Because maybe it's a truth. It's a truth. Maybe I am not simple. But to me, simple means nothing.
hmm.
And the other day you sent me Osho's, unless we're utterly confused,
Yeah.
we will never give up of self-knowledge.
Hmm.
Maybe this is what you and I are doing. We're literally confusing ourselves even more. We're right
Yes.
on path.
Usually when we jump on the cities, I have this thought that runs in the back of my head, like, what are we doing here? This is this feels pointless now. Uh,
We're totally confusing. But
yeah.
I like that. I mean, it feels good.
Yeah, yeah. It's like unwinding, unraveling. And I mean, I leave our talks with like a buzzing energy. And I think it's contagious. And this is part of, I venture to say this is part of the work that does change the world, even if no one actually watched our videos. Because I'm going out, emanating and vibrating at a different frequency. And there's an element of like we're talking ourselves through, like exhausting ourselves, like vomiting out the things that we think we know from reading this. And then we're just like empty and open.
Same. I almost always feel, that was a good work.
Yeah.
I feel like a heavy body of weight was just like completed. It
Mhm.
feels very completed. I didn't know we are going to compliment each other this much this time, but hello. It's like, stop it, stop it, stop it.
Yeah,
Okay, okay. So I wrote ouch next to this one, and tell me, does it trigger you like this too? This, in many ways, the spiritual search for truth that is gripping so many individuals in our Western world today is the greatest self obsession of all.
yeah.
The path itself easily becomes an addiction that keeps you from truly being yourself.
Yeah.
Bam.
Yeah, and how I feel this in my life is surges of energy toward a goal or an objective or just attaining knowledge. And then there will be periods of like, I don't know why I did all that, but I'm here now. And then inevitably back around into something else, something new. So it's like, I think levels of consciousness, right? And some of the trap is like being conscious of the fact that we're conscious beings enables a sort of bypassing to happen with our habits and behaviors. that we allow lest we like truly die. Like, so if that didn't make sense, let me try to clarify a little bit. By me being conscious enough to know I shouldn't take this to the extreme, but I'm going to allow myself to explore it at depth for what I want to, for what my desire pushes me into. It's an element of like, well, I shouldn't repress this urge, or I shouldn't deny that there's like when I read something, something clicks, or I get triggered, or I'm like moving through it, or I feel like as we're working through this podcast, like an opening. But the background level of highest consciousness, like if I call in my highest self, it says to me, you like the internet could go out right now in the world. You wouldn't have access to it the way you did. You wouldn't be able to broadcast it the way you want to. You wouldn't be able to share ideas the way you have been. And you'd be closer than ever before because you wouldn't be in your way as much. There's that voice, and then I go, yeah, but just let me just go through this. Like I want to get through the end of the book and see what happens. It's like when you watch a movie, you know how it's going to end. You can kind of you can sense it. Like I've seen 10 movies that have had the same plot line, rising action, climax, falling action, following the hero's journey, and you still want to watch the movie. It's like that's our life. I still want to play it out and be a part of it. And maybe that's the addiction or the fear of losing identity. Like I said, the ultimate death.
Hmm. So how do you know which one to follow?
Well, I always give a higher weight to my higher self. But often what I notice is my higher self won't give me advice that I can't follow or won't give me direction that I can't hear. It's like the Hermetic axiom, like for those who have ears to hear. Like
Hmm.
you won't receive a message that you're not ready for. It just won't happen. So often, if you're getting something that feels challenging, it's still within your means. It's still something that you're capable of. Like imagine you get called today or tonight after we're done. You get called in by your higher self and it says, Melissa, I want you to become Pharaoh of LA. And you're gonna start tomorrow. You're like, there's no stepping stone? Like, what do you mean? Just as a silly example.
So they're both true. It just so in one way or another, doing your stepping stones and stepping on those stones or through the path makes you more secure in where you're headed.
Mm.
It's almost like one wants to rush it right away.
Mm.
The other one wants to take its sweet time. How I understood this as a spiritual search is like it's a universal way of expression nowadays is that we're seeking spirits or we're on a spiritual journey or I got a Shakti awakening or I got Kundalini awakening. It's like very simple, very standardized way of journeying somewhere that we hear in a Western culture here in the United States in general. And sometimes I get confused about where you headed. First of all, how do you know you're still on that journey? Does it
Mm.
last forever? Are you still on it 5 years later? Or is it supposed to tap into it or tap out of it? So I used to say, oh, the portal just opened because I just had this like calling. And now when I hear myself saying that, I almost cringe because that wasn't even a calling. That was just my time. And my time was just for information that just like tickled something and cracked something open. And I don't really know, am I on it yet? Did
Mm.
I discover anything? I don't know. Am I still on the same journey or a totally different journey? I don't know how many journeys I have. I don't even know is this a spiritual journey. What I do know is the process that makes me feel something.
Mm.
And I don't know, do I feel lighter than I was before? I really don't, or bigger, or more, larger. I don't know any of it. And it's like when we identify so much with the spiritual path, or I'll touch something that might get triggering, but hey, we're here to question everything actually in life. And when I hear that people are on a medicine path, this is exactly the same way that the spiritual path used to be. It's very standardized, it's very popularized, and everybody's using it to a point where they don't even know what that means anymore. Yet it's addictive because now you self-identify and you get so self-obsessed with it that that's all you identify with. I'm on this spiritual path through the self-medicine. It's like I hear it all the time. Don't say it, don't say it. Just do it rather than explaining and identifying with it, because it's like it almost sounds like you're already lost, or whatever that you're headed, right? So out of all of this, does anything trigger you by any mean?
Mm. Yeah, for me, the trigger is like needing any of it, or like needing, like where do these needs arise from? So like I'm triggered because it feels like stripping something away that I'm like, well, this is my thing, this is my blanket. Like you said, the attachment.
Identification with it.
Yeah, and there's the furthest trap of this is the non-identification is also an attachment. There's like a level of I think at some point life, even saying some point is like it's alluding to we're not there yet.
Hmm.
Life is a meditation. We are enlightened because things come and go. People are here and they're not. This experience is real and it's not. The labeling gets in the way of the experiencing of the unfoldment of what is. The time that we're relating to things is an illusion as well. So when I call in my higher self, assuming it's like after I've done all this work, that's the person that it's telling me it could just be like baby me. It's like I know the answers for you that you're seeking, which are it's usually stripping away attachments, telling me like get rid of that, let go of it. So it's deeply triggering. It's like awful, feels horrible.
But it's meant to be triggering.
Yeah. No,
And if
I'm
it
not rejecting it. Um,
okay, can I dive deeper a little bit, a layer? I'm curious. I'm just curious. When we get triggered like that, because I get triggered by this on the other side too. It's very triggering for me when someone identifies with it rather than their own true naturalness or organic self-expression. Sure,
mm, mhm.
it might be this now, but tomorrow it's something else. But yet it might be this now, it was like this before, it was like this 10 years ago, you're still in it. How? So, question, when it's triggering like this, does it change your observation of that soul's journey? No, let me rephrase. Does it change the book cover of that person for you?
Does it change my book cover?
The way you see the book cover of the other.
Of the other? I guess it should.
Should it? Should I change the way I see you just because you enjoy it? And I say, I don't think that's my journey.
Explain this one more time for me.
Should I change how I see you, your book
Based
cover,
based
if
upon.
if I am in a total opposition from you? So
Mm,
let me
yeah.
elaborate. When I get triggered like this, right? Okay, let's say something is just like icky. It's like ew, 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 ew. And oftentimes that we really just work under the shadow immediately because there's a judgment, and so how dare you, you're so opposite from me. And what's interesting is that rather than accepting it as the opposition, we are there to judge and change it. So if I am a proponent of non-spiritual life
Mm,
or non-medicine way of spiritualizing inner self, immediately I'm like, but why would you do that? Right. So I myself go against it by default and say, but why would you do that? You have plenty supplies.
yeah.
Example, you can use different tools and you can just like play with your own emotions. Why would you need any type of external factors to change you or crack you open? Right. But what I don't see in that moment is that not all the tools that work for me will work for you,
Mm,
because you have a completely different genetic code. Your code is different. You're meant to come here and totally do it different. You're line 6, I'm line 2. So
hmm.
our lines are different. Our genes are like fundamentally different. So how I have to put a lot of effort to stop myself from changing the cover of your book, because your book is actually rich already. It's just the way your hardcover or your soft cover. It doesn't matter what you're doing. What matters is that your energy itself is already rising. But I have to put myself into that mind state. My default thinking is shadow way of judging.
Oh, interesting.
Do you see?
Okay. Yes. So yeah, because that question kind of tricked me. Um, because you're saying initially when you relate with another, you have some sense of a book cover for them instead of like for you to see the book, it comes with a cover. It just kind of it's just part of the experience
For the triggering subject,
through the triggering. Okay, gotcha,
like a spiritual path.
gotcha. And this is if someone is like combative with you or like oppositional,
Yeah.
not like you and I, because I'm like, oh, I don't a hard time seeing you as a combatant um, in life. That's interesting. So when you stop yourself, does it feel like suppressing something inside of you, or how does that play out?
It's a joke. It's a game.
Yeah.
And it's playful because I catch myself. I almost have another layer of me that goes and says, no, 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 no. This is where you get to lose. Remember. So it's never suppressed, or I'm never biting my tongue for saying something, or rather than my expression comes in a very different energy field.
Hmm, hmm,
So it's almost like I don't battle with it. It's just me.
hmm.
But me comes with accepting you.
Yeah.
Total
Yeah.
opposite. It's a great chance in life to learn. That's how I see it. I was like, oh, I see the opposition. Let's game.
Ah, okay. That's nice.
Yeah.
The and for you and I, we're in the realms of spiritual development, I would say. Would you claim to that?
I would say it's an evolution of something.
Okay. But you play in like I would say the informational databases and the people groups that are kind of like thought leaders, philosophizers, practitioners. And with that, our perception of the world is colored by these experiences and by these practices and by this information. Because it's becoming more mainstream, especially the plant medicine thing. Um, Frank Yang, who I talked about earlier, he made a video of he travels the world and then he makes videos based on some of his experiences. He made a video about Miami and about how Miami is such a melting pot of culture and everyone's there to fulfill a selfish desire of some kind for the most part, that it actually has a spiritual quality to it because there's no ulterior motive. There's no layer of like, oh, I'm doing this to become a better human being, but it's like really a selfish motive. So he's like, when he spends time in Miami, he feels like it's one of the most spiritual places on earth because it's just this hedonistic melting pot of culture and ideas, and everyone's just expressing themselves the way they want to. And I'm like, wow, that's really unique because normally in identifying with a path, I'm tempted then to separate and then label those people that are not interested as being lesser than, lower than, darker than, less conscious, whatever it is. But it's like actually, and this is interesting, the um like the Arhat in Buddhist teaching, the enlightened one that doesn't need to do anything, like doing nothing is the highest expression of being. They in that enlightenment, they view everyone in the world as already enlightened. Part of the expression of there's nothing to do. But we'll jump into that later. I keep jumping to the cities.
It's this is full, and you always keep jumping into cities. Did you notice this?
Yes.
You're always like, I want to go there. Okay, that's about all the spiritual life that we have to say. But
Mhm.
do you want to touch base on the repressive and reactive nature of the shadow? I think it's really cool to touch base on this,
Of course.
because it's popular nowadays.
Yeah. The repressive nature is self-denying, which is the introverted nature of the shadow, denying oneself altogether. This kind of reversal of the energy of self-obsession becomes entirely centrifugal and focuses on everything and anything but oneself. And he states that these lives are made up entirely of compromise and they become like zombies for the collective, and how the majority of humanity is in that repressive, self-denying state. So I find that very interesting because in just relating with people, and my wife Carly is someone that has aspects of this, as we all have aspects of shadows. Um, but the self-denial, it's kind of like it's interesting that he uses the word zombie for self-denial because one of the best teachings for the majority of humanity is be selfish for once. Just do what you want. Say what it is that you need from a relationship or your boss or your coworker. Like express yourself. And it's in self-denying that we allow ourselves to be accepted and living in that fear around acceptance and being well liked or a people pleaser. So one of the most healing things I think for the majority of people is frame every situation that we're in, and just do this as an exercise. Frame it as selfishly, what do I actually want from this? And we can use our emotional needs um, to help with that. And then let's be real about what our selfish intent is. Like, hey, I want to get to know you, and I'm trying to woo you. It could be a single person that's dating. I'm trying to woo you because for me, having a partner makes me feel validated, whole. And just so you know, in that process, once I've got the key to your heart, my behavior is going to change drastically because I'm behaving, and this is more of like a male thing, but I'm behaving in a way to win the prize. And that's going to change once I feel like, I got the prize. I can relax now. And I think just that alone would be like so beneficial for the flow of energy in the world.
Mm. Don't you think that this expresses itself differently between the sexes?
Yes. Do you want to talk more on that?
Yeah, let's touch base. I think this connects also to the 11 too, is that the the repression, the collective repression in the in women versus collective suppression in men. And as we care, I did this meditation the other day, actually yesterday, which was interesting. We carry a lot of fears and sorrows and guilt and shame differently. So they're very different for two different sexes. In this case, male and female, and the bodies that have the the organs, as we know, not non-gender bodies, right? But if you really think about it, is that the way the male society was suppressed versus the female is very different. So
Mhm.
self-denying in women is very different from self-denying in men. And if I may speak on behalf of Carly or on behalf of myself as a woman, identified woman, is you almost have like the fears that are not even yours, you can feel it in your body because you're programmed to think so, that you're less, that you're not worthy, or that you can't even. So layers. And I did the meditation when the layer was so thick,
Mm.
this much, which was not mine. And in meditation, you're asked to either reject it back and say, hey, this is not mine, go back to where you come from. Or you have an option to heal it and close it and send it to the elements of nature, fire, water, air, earth, for it to heal itself on. And what's left is really your fear, which is this little. And when you discover that part of little self that has been layered, and literally carried all this level of weight that it's not even yours, then you realize that this really is something that it's doable for you to change.
Mm.
Right. And the weight that it's not yours from the male side is very much, this is yours, get it back. From a female side, we don't have heart to send this back to where it came from. I can't give it back to my grandma. I have no heart for it. I can't. It's not even coming in. Rather than I will take it all fully as it's in my body and I will give it away to the elements of transformation rather than rejecting it and sending it right back to it. But if you, from a male perspective, have another, let me just ask you this: another opponent of a male opponent, and it's a threat to you. You start questioning yourself. Are you good enough as a male, as a father, as a son, as a male figure in your society that you're in? Would you reject it back to the male, another strong male, maybe even stronger than you in all aspects of his life? Or would you actually embody it like this and work your way through to release it rather than send it right back? What's your default? Be honest.
Mm. If it's a mask, yeah, if it's a male energy, I don't think I take it in and work with it.
Fundamentally,
Yeah.
we're different in how we process it. So self-denying is I find it easily with easily suppressed, easily for a female rather than no, this is you. You're freaking gorilla. And you're talking about Godzilla and this is your territory. This is you and you're gonna be big and it comes really natural, I think, to males. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but
Yeah.
I just wanted to share this.
It's definitely easier. And for just the reason that you stated, like you have deeper layers of fear, shame, emotion that you're responsible for, whereas a male isn't.
You'll
It's
go to
just
war.
the nature of polarity.
You'll go to war. Your tanks are bigger.
Yeah.
What about narcissistic nature, which is reactive? Explain this to me. It doesn't make sense.
Okay. I'll try.
Have you ever met a narcissist person?
Like the embodiment of narcissism. Let me just read a little bit just to make sure I'm accurate. The reactive denies the existence of others. These are the people whose lives are based entirely around themselves. The fear within them lives as anger. They project their fear of losing their identity onto others and onto society in general. Such people cannot yield any part of themselves to others. They live in paranoia that the world or others will somehow rob them of their right to freedom. Um, well, this sounds like your friend that you spoke on earlier. Um, yeah, who's just
Mimi
unable to,
me?
yeah. Um, and I've definitely had states of narcissism for sure. And it's
Were you
usually,
ever called one?
was I ever called one? Uh, and not in a direct way, like not with the word narcissism, but yeah, I've definitely been called selfish or self-centered for sure. In my family, my sister does a good job of telling me, or she's told me in the past. Um,
How did it feel?
well, if I'm like, she likes to use the word asshole, and if I'm currently being an asshole, like if I'm in that state of reactivity, it just bounces off. Like I'm like, yeah, so who cares? Like it doesn't. I'm like, I've already accepted that I am that because this is how I'm surviving right now.
Hmm,
So it's
defense
interesting. It's like
mechanism.
that's probably why there's no capacity for vision outside of that sphere or that bubble.
Hmm. Yeah, I was called narcissist. It blew my mind as a new concept in my brain that has never thought about it that way. And I'm like, wait, what? When you receive the information and if you are curious, you would question everything that comes your way, every single thing, as a truth or not. You would ask, is it true? Wait a minute, let me think about it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was surprised.
Yeah.
Didn't identify with it, but I was really surprised that I triggered something in another that had that reaction back. I
Yeah.
don't know. I thought about it. I was pissed too. I was like, what? Wait a minute. And I was just like yelling in the car. I was like, what? So the fact that the wave came to me as an identification in any format, especially something so popularized nowadays, it's
Yeah.
almost like was triggering because now I'm labeled.
Yeah.
And to me, you took a freedom from me, but I had to go inward to say, but no matter what you say, I don't feel, I have freedom on my own and I get to, fight for it. I don't have to reflect back. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I, are you aware? I'm assuming you're aware that you had a response with anger, and then you talked about someone trying to strip away your freedom. Like it's like, yeah, you followed that to a T. And what I was alluding to with being called an asshole, it's like I was so deep in the reactivity that it was like I saw the world with rose, not love, but anger, like red colored glasses, that it just, I'm like, fuck it. Like, okay. I didn't even take it in depth. Whereas for you, you allowed it to play out just as this is how we're supposed to work with our shadows. We're supposed to go into it, listen to the message that's coming in and really analyze, is this coming from me, or is this someone projecting onto me? Or how should I take it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a spiral. And I think when this is the danger of us labeling anything and anyone, when we label per definition, Google definition, or DSM-5 definition, mental disorders, or it gives you that identity by default. And then you question and you really are. I was in a labyrinth for hours trying to figure out what just happened. Why do I feel like this? And I just questioned everything, like everything, to a point where I had to be validated. And it pushed me so far that I had to call another again and say, is this me? Because I'm not losing my mind thinking maybe, but maybe not, maybe yes, maybe not, maybe yes. And so the validation, or so-called validation of another, was like, you're fucking kidding me, you're nothing by that, really helped me ground myself back. But I went far away just
Yeah.
by being labeled like that for hours. And it was so profound, because this is what labeling is doing to people and identification. And it was, it's powerful.
Yeah.
Powerful. Like, yeah.
Can I ask you what the stakes were? Like where did this label come from, and was it in a public setting or
No, it was the relationship.
oh, okay.
And um trying to recall the exact situation and what caused this, but it was almost to a point where she tried to understand her state of emotion, her emotional state, by justifying my actions and reactions.
Hmm.
And it was almost, I feel like this because you have a lot of issues,
Hmm.
and borderline because you're mentally abusive as well. And I'm like, what?
Hmm.
And it was very strange concept of me, because I never even thought like that. I don't think like that,
Hmm.
to a point where if you're able to think it, then you're able to live it. And when something came as an information, especially labeled for me or reflected from someone to me, I always thought, like, wait, if you're thinking it, then you're living it. I don't think like that. I don't call people mentally abusive if you say fuck you. You're just having a
Yeah.
tantrum moment. Chill, chill, chill.
Hmm.
But and then yeah, I think I was ready for that trigger for that opening to crack, so that way I can learn back the self-worth and who truly I am again, because I forgot. And when I loosened up the weakness to the shadow of it, shadow just grabbed me and I started identifying with it. And I was like, maybe I am. What did I say? And I just went back. And I couldn't find anything other than everything was wrong that I did. Maybe I should have done everything wrong. And it's like just starts to eat you like a disease, and it takes
Yeah.
over your entire body. It's really dangerous. I I can't stand when people label each other, and especially are themselves too. I don't label. I'm not gay. I am not, like, I don't want to label, because you identify with it by default. It's very hard to disidentify with it. So it
Yeah.
was a good lesson.
And that's a good example, like gay or straight. For me, it's been wonderful to have like dedicated time with you because I very quickly, I think it was by Jinky 1, I was just like, it's Milica. Like that's my label. That's as far as I'll go. Like it just dropped, like everything just dropped.
Yeah.
Um, And that sense of freedom, if if you can provide it for others, then you can receive it for yourself. And that's what I think that's what we're after when it comes to freedom. Feeling free is like free of labels because
Yeah.
they're just boxes that we don't need to be in at all. So it's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Every, yeah, it's like allow me to be me again
Hmm.
without you telling me who I am or what I should be. Like only then, and we're now tapping into the naturalness, which is the gift, is like, how do you live your own truth? Where is this truth coming from? Your truth is very unique for your own. My truth is very different. May I express it? In fact, I'm not gonna. Why do we have to ask? Should I? Can I? Please, can I express myself? Express yourself. I mean, no, the limits and like boundaries. Don't go bananas. But if you're operating on the gift, you don't really worry about what others are
Hmm.
saying, and it's a beautiful state of mind because you get to create. Art comes in, art of yourself, art of who you truly are.
Yeah.
Renaissance is happening with you, within you.
Mm.
Yeah. All right. So we're all trying to be who we are, but many of us have been conditioned to be other than who we are. It has been this way throughout our history ever since we began to develop the complex neocortex, which is majority of reprogramming that a lot of women are doing nowadays. Programming, like
Mm.
you're asking yourself, who am I? You're asking, is it really me? Do I really fit the standard of patriarchy? Do do I really need to wear a long hair and have the nails? Why? Who says? Because I look sexy for TV? Because the man gets turned on by it? But why? I feel much more comfortable in sneakers than in heels. And I wore heels and skirts and had long nails and long hair. But I am truly who I am with shaved
Hmm.
bald hair.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful because you can feel the energy difference. So when was the time when you started questioning who you are and finding your true self?
I think 14, 15 years old.
Did any event trigger that?
Um, Possibly. I mean, there's things I could point to. Around that time, my brother is two and a half years older than me, and we lived out in the country, so we didn't have like a big neighborhood that we could play with a bunch of friends. So for the most part, it was myself and him playing together in the yard or playing video games or doing anything together, swimming, whatever it was. And he had a very good friend of his commit no, not commit suicide. She died in a car accident when he was 16 or 17, and he just went full hermit, and I
Mm.
lost him as a friend, and it was abrupt for me because he was all of a sudden in his room, and it wasn't until like 3 days after that I found out what happened. Um, so it felt like I lost the chance to even have a conversation about it, and it was just completely changed at that point because his relationship with himself changed, and I couldn't comprehend it. So on one hand,
Mm.
it I was without my best friend at that point, and then I mean I had friends in school. I wasn't a recluse. Um, but I spent a lot of time at home, and it enabled me to have a lot of time of introspection and trying to figure things out and being curious about the world in my own way and not tying that to my brother's doing this and let me follow him. It was for once I had my own open road in front of me, so it's just kind of exploring in that. And I remember watching a an anime TV show, and there was a full episode dedicated to a ego death of a character, and it was very creatively expressive like he became like this fluid blob, all this stuff, and the whole time he's questioning. The premise of the whole episode was who am I? And it was just and it just blew my mind. I was like, what did I just watch? Like this was about, like fighting, whatever. And then it just totally became like this huge journey of introspection and identification. And I was like, it cracked me open. And I think that sent me on this journey of spiritual quest. Um, Trying to find out like what are the religions of the world? Like what do they state about reincarnation or about death or about ego? And
Mm.
just layer, and just kind of looking and looking and looking.
Do you still ask yourself, who am I?
Not very often.
Did you ever find the answer?
Um, Found an answer, but I don't really carry it with me.
I'm laughing because every time I ask, who am I? Why am I here? What am I doing here? There's never an answer.
Mhm.
There's never a concrete answer.
Yeah.
It just comes as, what? Who am I?
Hmm.
What am I doing here? Like, what in the world am I doing here? It's my constant question.
It's like being shaken.
Like, literally, it's like
Yeah.
I sit at the business dinners and I'm like, what am I doing here? And I never get the answer. I'm in the group of people, and often I'm like, why am I here? Why? And the question is enough. It's the only question that I can't find the concrete answer, but yet it changes the entire trajectory. And what am I doing? I
Hmm.
love them.
Yeah, I find that the question leads to deeper breathing naturally.
This question,
Hmm. Like
yeah,
if you really give it time, like eventually you'll find yourself breathing into your belly.
you relax your anus.
Mm. Well, yeah, that too. If you really get into it, I think if you get to the point of like, oh, there's no answer, and then it's just like, oh,
Yeah, you take a shit.
yeah.
You can take a shit and then just chill. There's no answer and just move. Ah, funny. Yeah. Okay. CD. Divine laziness. Did you laugh when you read this? Divine laziness.
Oh, I mean, I didn't laugh initially. I was like, of course, it's divine laziness. Um, have you seen, just this is like a side note, but have you seen Osho speak like on YouTube or anything?
Long time ago.
Okay. He's like, he's like, and then there were two. And he'll even draw out his, like if he has a word that ends in S, like laziness. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Like what?
Why?
Every word just nice and long. His talks are like an hour and a half, 2 hours long, and
It's
he
one
doesn't need to
line.
he doesn't need to say very much. He's just like very relaxed, the most relaxed person I've ever seen talk.
This reminds me of a comedian. And he comes every other year in Vegas actually to do the show. And I've seen him. And I could not believe the steady, calm state that he actually cracks jokes in without moving his, and he literally talks in this tone and goes
Mm.
like, today I went to the grocery store and I did this, and without laughing at all, dead serious for an hour and a half without even taking a deep breath. It's all one monotone, and if I tell you what just happened, you're not going to believe it because I just had to do. It's like just like this one line, flat line. I think his name was Wright or something, I can't remember.
Mm.
hilarious. People scream laughing because he's really funny, but
Yeah.
he's dead.
Yeah. It's like
I don't know.
the irony of his delivery.
It's comedy.
Yeah.
Osho is not calling me. I'm hearing a lot of people talking Osho. My sister actually reads it and the native language, Serbian language nowadays, but it's not calling me yet. I don't know.
He
Interesting.
like the thing I sent you is, he says my whole nature or my whole purpose is in confusing you. So you'll have, and he's got, I don't know, he must have like thousands of hours of talks online. And so if you jump into something, it might seem like, oh, that sounds familiar or that sounds preachy. And then there's some that you might get and you're like, why is he cracking jokes about a priest and a cat? Like you'll get the whole spectrum, and it takes like a good book. It takes some time to capture
Mm.
like the flavor and the essence. What I find is he brings you to a state of, well, why did I think I had an answer for this? Like he allows you to let go of your knowledge, your understanding.
Hmm.
Yeah. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. There's no,
Used to know a girl, I worked with her together and she loved it. And every time she would listen to Osho, she would create and design digital art.
wow.
I'm like, what is that Osho brings? What state does the Osho put you in for you to, create? And I remember her more than I remember Osho.
Yeah,
Her
yeah.
art was so colorful. And I was like, this state of mind is tickled by Osho's speaking. Maybe his
Hmm.
sound, or I don't know, the words that he's using.
Hmm.
Oh,
Hmm.
we'll never know, I guess.
Yeah. So the cities, and I was mentioning earlier, um, the 10th city is destined to be deeply misunderstood by all those who do not live in its embrace. And so this is where the shadow and the city become conflated from the outside perspective. You're self-obsessed, or lazy, looks the same. And some of the criticisms that have been lobbed at quote unquote masters are like similar. Like, oh, you're just self-obsessed, narcissistic, lazy, or self-denying, whatever it is. Um,
And nobody will never ever know the true state other than the person himself or herself.
yeah, it's definitely true. However, something that comes up for me is like there is a flavor. There is like you said, getting tickled by it, like or like goosebumps. You wouldn't get that from someone that's completely self-obsessed, narcissistic, like the person that you talked about earlier you met in Vegas. Like you're not
True.
sitting there and you're like, oh, the hair standing up on the back of my neck, the way you're just talking about yourself over and over and over.
It's almost like you need to be in the presence of the aura of that
Yes.
person in order to
Yes.
feel it.
Yes.
This reminds me of Ram Dass and Maharaji,
Yeah.
and how Maharaji was just, the being sitting with the gown on and like enjoying the nature. And people would just sit around him,
Hmm.
including Ram Dass too, and feed off this divine bliss from him.
Hmm.
And he wouldn't even say anything. He'd just be
Right.
in the presence of it.
Right.
I wonder will we ever get to that level, or just experience, like, not to become one. I don't know, just the experience, like presence of someone so powerful.
Yeah. Do you think I'm almost tempted to say like there are, Sadhguru is alive, Muji, um, I can't think of a few others, but there are like masters that kind of play with that right now. But I've heard even Sadhguru say in his earlier state, he was like he had the aura, and he people were like they would see him floating when they would visit him, and and just by touching him or being near him, they would be changed, and he wouldn't have to do anything. And he said that he was called to dumb down his image or like ground himself into a more acceptable version to broaden his reach. And and this people are going to be skeptical of this. But I
Mm,
wonder with the ascension light codes that are coming in and the natural evolution that's already occurring, if that model of the master and the followers is being done away with. It's kind of like archaic at this point. I wonder if that's true or yeah.
it defeats the purpose of my next question, then, if this is true, that all of us will come to enlightened states and float above the earth eventually. But why men
Oh,
only? Come on.
um, ah,
Doesn't this it alone makes you question?
yeah, for sure. There are women. I think if you're looking at figures in history, there's an obvious agenda at repressing the female empowerment. So, I mean that's a simple answer, right? Um, what comes up for you? What are some thoughts? Why it's mostly men?
I'll tell you, why am I here? Literally. It's like almost like, why am I question. So to me, if I question the validity of something immediately is like valid for me.
Mm,
My questioning of it.
mm,
Why follow unless I feel the need for it? That's why it's like I'm not called for Osho's teaching
yeah.
yet. I'm not called to do ayahuasca, or I'm not called for Sadhguru's listening. Rather, I'm actually called to completely different energies, and they're there existing. They're just not mainstream.
Hmm.
But I always wonder, how do we always have, like, I'm called for Blavatsky's teaching, and it's
Yes.
Madame Blavatsky. Have you heard for it?
Yes, I have her book.
And you do?
Hmm.
Have you ever, well, did you dive into the teachings?
Um, I dove in and then I dove right back out because it's
What
so
happened?
dense and wasn't in a place. But interesting enough, I have there's a woman that I follow on YouTube. She regularly puts out videos. Her name is The Alchemist, and she's an occult esoteric teacher, and it matches with the teaching. But I still haven't like completed um like the Secret Doctrine. I have the volumes of the Secret Doctrine, and
Yeah,
yeah,
me too. And Isis Unveiled.
yep.
And I keep thinking of her, and I had the books, and I knew that eventually it will call upon me to, like, I will feel curiosity about it, right? So I opened it a couple years ago, and I'm like, what? I don't get it. You're not always ready to comprehend it, but it's tickling my curiosity, and it's like Hermetic teachings as well. I have a book, and it's just waiting. But as soon as I pass by it, out of all the library that I have, my eyes stop right there on these two teachings, and it's like there must be something.
Hmm.
Like I don't. Osho's book is $15, but I'm not really. I don't know. Anyway, I question it, and I think it's healthy to question everything that comes your way, even
Of
for
course,
listeners, even what we're saying. You should question everything
of
and not take
course,
anything as your own truth.
hmm of course. And there's a sense of freedom, and I think part of the experience too that needs to be validated for people is it's okay if you buy a book and you don't read it.
Oh yeah, or
Yeah.
don't finish it.
Or don't finish it. It's okay if you start and don't finish. And the
Or read
quicker,
five at once.
yeah, and the quicker you can do that, the more like what you're attempting to access by buying the book, you'll receive it in different ways, and you'll receive it in a timing that's appropriate. If you just plow through stuff, you might not get anything out of it
Yes. Do you
except for
feel
a
energies
checklist.
through? Yes. or find yourself that you actually are now knowledgeable more?
Hmm.
Do you feel energies through the books that you're reading?
Yeah, of course. With Blavatsky, I feel this, it feels like a thousand voices speaking through one. It feels like really potent. And I think that's part of what kind of I'm drawn in. And then I'm like, okay, it's almost like I didn't have the capacity to give it the appropriate attention. It was like, this isn't just any book or any message. Kind of like if you were able to channel like through your voice, you would want to be like, okay, I'm well fed. I'm not sleepy. My kids are taken care of. I'm not worried about someone coming in because like literally um Thoth is speaking through my voice. Like I'm gonna be here and I'm gonna be listening.
We should, after this, we should analyze and dive into Blavatsky together.
Okay. Podcast number 2.
Podcast number 2. When I touch the book and I grab it like this, I feel the richness of it.
Hmm.
And I'm yet to open it in tiny little mini letters and read it. Like literally by the book itself, it feels irradiates this energy of
Yeah.
fatness,
Yeah. And I have
which is
this,
scary.
yeah, it's like that sense of like power and fear. And part of it too is my knowing that you don't produce these works in that time. And this was like early, late 1800s, early 1900s. And even she's carrying a lineage far back. I can feel the weight of martyrdom and witch hunting, and I can feel that coming. And I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
I'm not opening this unless, yeah, unless I'm ready for it. And then as a third party example too, I have Osho's book. I have a few of his books, but Freedom from Oneself is an amazing book. And if I have it out on the table, my littlest son, Koa, will beeline toward the table, pulling, trying to get to this book. And I'm like, okay, it's time to read
That's
again.
interesting.
Or let me put this away because I'm not ready to.
Maybe it's for him eventually.
Yeah, or maybe he's like, Dad, Dad, you need more of this.
Or maybe you read this as a lullaby to him.
Yeah, and I'll do that with the kids sometimes, you know, allowing the realm of magic to play above my sense of awareness of where their brain state is at, because who knows what their subconscious mind and their body and their spirit is able to process. I know their spirit's able to process all of the above, so why would I limit what they're
Mm,
taking?
who knows what's behind it?
Hmm.
Who knows how deep or big or high they can go?
Hmm.